Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dr. Rebecca Jackson. She is an industry leader in brain health and optimizing the brain to enhance how you feel and function. She brings 15 years of brain balance experience to her role as Chief Program Officer. And in this role, she has published research on improving cognition, development, and well-being, drives pragmatic enhancements, and creates new programs to meet the growing demands of people wanting to achieve more. More we'll talk with Dr. Rebecca Jackson herself. Welcome to the show, Dr. Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ. I'm thrilled to be here.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll talk about brain health. And that is such an important thing. So in that backdrop, so first to understand, Dr. Rebecca, nowadays we are talking so much about our brain. We thought brain is the most important part. It drives us, guides us in the best direction possible. But nowadays there is a lot of, uh, I would not say interference, but a lot of tinkling with the brain itself, and we are trying to make it better. If experts do it, it is understandable. When there is a problem, it is understandable. But many a time there is so much of talk about brain that sometimes I don't know. We are, why is it so that we are talking so much about brain today? Very few people talk about brain health, but they talk about rewiring the brain, doing so many things with the brain. I want to understand from a common person's perspective, a person who is staying in a rural area, who is listening or seeing all these conversations, what to make out of all these things.
Yeah. Do you know, the brain is just simply fascinating. And the more I learn about it, the more I feel like I know nothing and have only so much more to learn. And for me, as I started learning more and more about neurology and the brain, one of the things that was surprising to me was my understanding of how much our brain impacts our mood and our thoughts. We know that our brain dictates our ability to pay attention, to remember information, to learn, but it's so much more than that. Our thoughts in the brain are connections just like actions are. And the wonderful thing about science and what we're learning more and more in research today is that the brain is able to change. We used to have this thought that only the young children who were growing and developing rapidly had brains that were able to be built upon and changed. But we now know that the brain is able to be changed at any age. So having an understanding that if you're feeling negative, you're feeling burnt out, you're struggling with attention, you're struggling with organization, those are things that can be changed. You don't have to feel stuck when the strategies that you have in place aren't working. We can strengthen and improve your brain to make it faster, stronger, and improve the endurance. And that impacts everything from the work we do to learning new information and executing in life.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can make our brains better, but brain is also under a lot of attack. And when I say this, there is so much of talk about mental health. Obviously, it is because of the times we live in. But a big talk is also happening about attention span. A brain is designed in a way that it will function in a certain way. But nowadays we talk about attention span for whatever reason, social media or for industry, industry greed, if you can say. And we talk about 10 seconds, 8 seconds, 6 seconds, maybe less. How do you look at that? Because when we talk about optimizing the brain, it does not mean that you decrease the attention span. Then brain is under attack. If I see it from a common person's perspective, how do you see it as a doctor? How do you live in a world like this? When your brain is struggling with trying to find the right attention span for itself. Help us understand, because it's the same problem with kids, it's the same problem with adults at least know how to program their life better, but kids, they're just trying to learn these things, and that is what will be ingrained in their brain forever, and perhaps it will twist their brain in a negative way. Help us understand it, because these are difficult times, good technology, but a lot of difficult times indeed.
Our lives are filled with distractions, but yet we need to perform now more than ever. It's first important to know that our attention span comes from our development. So if there's any development that's gone off track, an individual, whether you're a child or an adult, is going to have less of an attention span. Then it's also so important to understand there's different types of attention. And what parents say to me all the time, and I talk about, I have a book that was out in September, and I talk about this a lot in the
Yes,
book.
yes, yes.
Is,
You can talk about. I would have otherwise
yeah,
asked about back on track.
yeah. But it's, something that parents say to me all the time is, why can my child be on their phone for 2 hours or play video games for hours, but I can't get them to sit down and do math for 20 minutes? But it's important to understand that the attention that we use, that's sustained attention to do something like math or work, is very different than the type of attention that we use to do something like social media or play a video game. Those things, the social media and video games, those are using really small increments of attention that are then strung together by a reward in the brain. So if I'm playing a video game and I'm earning points, my brain earns a dopamine reward. So I might have only paid attention for 10 seconds or 7 seconds, but then my brain is rewarded, making me want to continue that action to earn more dopamine. So playing 2 hours of video games is not 2 hours of sustained attention. It's those 7 seconds of short increments of attention, all strung together from rewards. And it's important to know that that is an extremely fatiguing kind of attention. So if you're spending large amounts of time gaming and on social media, and those things aren't bad, we just need to find the balance for our kids and for ourselves as adults. After spending a lot of time doing that, your brain is going to be tired, and a tired brain is negative. So we're going to get more in the way of pushback and negative behaviors from our kids, and we're going to struggle with mood and motivation in ourselves. So it's really important that we're supporting and exercising the type of attention we need for school and work. And that's the ability to pay attention for a longer period of time, 20, 30, 40 minutes, without earning a reward. I certainly don't get rewarded minute by minute throughout my workday. Maybe the reward comes from months of hard work, but we need to be able to sustain that attention. And so understanding what type of attention you're using at different times during the day can help you be more aware. And then making sure that you're finding balance for your kids of, if they've spent a lot of time doing that reward-driven attention, now switch gears and have them do a task that requires attention without rewards.
Okay. Let's look at this. You talk about, optimizing your brain for your development, for your well-being. And the present devices that are there, or the distractions they are there, they want to have your attention in a different manner, which can lead to fatigue if you are not. How do you balance both the things? Because you cannot not do one thing. Obviously, social media you can do without it, but you will not do without it. But that's the way it is today.
Yeah.
So how do you optimize your brain at the same time? And at the same time, something is severely draining you of your brain energy. How do you do that?
It's important to understand that when you're on technology, whether it's a computer or your phone device, you're using fewer of your senses and you're not moving as much. You and I, we're seated right now as we're talking on our computers. So it's so important to track the amount of time you and your kids are spending on devices versus how much time you're spending being physically active. The two biggest drivers of development, which improves both children's brain and adults' brain, is physical activity. It's our muscles and movement, and our sensory system. So while there is sensory input while we're gaming or on devices, that input is visual input and sound. Versus if I go outside and go for a walk, I feel the sun on my skin, I feel the breeze, I hear the birds and the noise and the dogs barking and the traffic, and then I'm moving and getting exercise. So it's so critical to watch your balance. So for as much time as you're spending on your computer and devices, you want to work to minimize that time and build up the time that you're spending being physically active. And it can be something as small as a 1 minute break. If you're seated at work or your kids are at school or sitting down to do homework, taking even just a minute to stand up, put the device down, and move. Doing exercise that spikes your heart rate is going to re-engage the memory and attention systems in your brain, helping you to sit down and focus again. So it's tracking how much time you spend using devices and how much time you spend moving, and then finding that balance and finding ways to work in different sensory input. Even something as simple as going barefoot for a walk outside. When you're going from concrete to grass to dirt, that's providing you with sensory input. Sensory input is how we experience the world. It's how you and I have a conversation to hear and see each other. It's how we block out distractions. And so making sure that we're experiencing a variety of different sensory input. If we're just at home or just in the office all day, we're getting the same sensory experiences over and over and over. So finding variety is critical.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I understand is back to the basics. Go for a walk, do a bit of workout, just be amongst the nature, and then you will be fine. So whenever you use some device or the other, just try to get a bit of time within nature, and that should if something is distracting you, then nature will bring you back or distract you away from that distraction and bring you back to on track. And second thing, you talk very well about walk barefoot and all. In India, we have that tradition because our weather also allows it, that we leave our shoes and all those slippers outside or at the near the door. If you have to use slippers within home, then you have home slippers, and most of the time you walk. But yes, if it is cold, like I do, most of the time I walk barefoot, or you
Wonderful.
wear slippers when it is a bit cold.
Yeah.
So outside it is, yeah, temperature can be a bit of a difficult thing, but whenever one must get time, then you should walk barefoot. I guess this is the way it creates it. It helps you get all the different things will get pressed against the natural, either soil or grass or anything, and then you feel better about it.
Yeah.
Whenever one must get, I guess that should help.
Yeah, we all need to learn a lesson from India. That's wonderful that's just a part of your culture. I love that. And I'll tell you another thing that I really love about what I have known and learned about the Indian culture is how much your culture values movement and exercise. The Indian families that I've worked with over the years are so good about consistently going for a walk, spending time outside. So again, lessons learned that are good for all of us.
Right. I guess in many other cultures also. You see, even I guess in Japan, in many other places they have this. I don't know much about it, but if I understand, even in Japan, a lot of houses have this. It is not about one culture or the other. The goodness from everywhere is a good for humanity. One must just, like in medicine. In India, if we talk about homeopathy, Ayurvedic, then in the Western system, you have got the surgery system. It can alleviate you with so much of that. Is why you should keep your doors and windows to the outside world, and then gain whatever best is everywhere. This is what technology brings about. That is why I said to you, Dr. Rebecca, initially, welcome to India in this online, because you get to listen to the best voices from around the world. People who are doing it day in and day out, and then you decide for yourself what is good for you. Get the best things, get the good ideas, and then take it or inculcate in your lives. Let's move forward now. Let's talk
Okay.
about productivity, and quote from your book, though I will certainly talk separately about your book, is nowadays there is whole talk about productivity and multitasking. I am not a multitasker. If I'm talking to you, that's it, and I'm listening to you. That's it. If I do anything else, or even if I try to, change anything, or say if I am trying to change this thing or this thing or this thing, I will get distracted. So all I try to do is one thing at a time, so that the whole experience is good.
Yeah.
How should one look at productive? People say, you use a lot of these tools are available, so you will become more productive, and then you can do what you want to do. But it is not actually happening that way. And second part is, multitasking. What would you like to say in terms of our brain's ability or capacity for these things? productivity, what is the end of this productivity, or what is the role of this productivity? Super productive people talk about high performance, and also in terms of this multitasking sort of a thing. Help us understand from a common person's perspective.
I think first, when we talk about productivity, it's so important to understand, again, going back to attention, we all have limited abilities. We don't have unlimited attentional abilities each day. I always think of attention like money. So if I woke up each morning and I had $100 that was handed to me, that's how much money I have to spend during the day. That is how much attention I have. And it's so easy to waste those attentional dollars on tasks that are less important. And so when we are attacking a day for productivity, it's important to start with your toughest tasks first. It's so easy to start by doing things that are easy as we work into the start our workday. So maybe, checking our email. But when we are fresh and focused, that's when you want to do the most high dollar, most high value things first. And so you want to tackle your toughest things first when you're fresh and focused. And know, again, that you can't sustain that focus indefinitely. So making sure that you're stopping and taking breaks so that you can re-engage and re-energize. And then making sure that you're well rested and fueled. A tired brain is a negative brain. I said that earlier. But if you haven't gotten enough sleep the night before, or have gone several nights without enough sleep, if you haven't been fueling your body with carbohydrates, proteins, and healthy fats, your brain is going to run out of the resources it needs to be productive. And it's important to know all of our lives go through times where we're facing stress or change. And those are sometimes things that we're not able to control. And stress and change takes money away from our resources. So if you start your day with $100 and you're facing high amounts of stress, that could remove $40. And now you have less resources to be as productive. And so knowing what you can do to set your brain up for success so that you can be more resilient means we need to optimize development every step of the way. A well-developed brain is full of fast, efficient brain connections, so it can pay attention longer, block out distractions more easily, and stay on task and be productive. So we want to be careful in how we're spending our attention resources. And the multitasking is a way that we end up wasting some of our resources. Each time we do a task, our brain doesn't truly multitask well. It does one thing at a time. So if I'm working on, maybe I'm writing an article and then my phone dings because I got a text message alert. Each time I glance up to check that message, I've stopped the mental train of thought that I've been doing. I've shifted my attention to something else. And now I have to task switch back to the original task. I just wasted $5 in that task switching moment. And so when you're doing things that require intensity, focused decision-making, memory, those things that are giving you a cognitive load or demand, you really want to create a distraction-free environment, because each distraction is a task switching moment that's burning resources. So turn off your alerts, turn off your noises and background things as much as you can, and working in blocks or chunks of time. And so if you say a 90-minute window is a really large attention block. And so if you start with a large block on a big project that you have, and then you finish that 90-minute window, you go eat, you go move, you take off your shoes and walk around outside, and then you come back and you work for now a slightly shorter block. Maybe the next block's going to be even something as small as 45 minutes, and work for a focused chunk of time. And then again, move, make sure that you're fueled so that you're working in really productive chunks and you're not doing multiple things all at the same time.
Right. Then when we talk of productivity, nowadays with so many tools coming in, people say, automation will free your mind. Is it like that? What is the biggest challenge that our brain is facing today? Or is it, let me ask you in this, Charles Dickens language, way of asking, is this the best of time for the brain? Or is this the worst of time for the brain?
That's a good question. It's both. I think it's the best of times in that we've got such a different understanding than we've ever had before. And so knowledge of self. So as I'm working, and if I find that my thoughts are starting to wander, that gives me awareness that it's time for me to take a break. I'm not being productive right now. Or if I find myself glancing at my phone, so that awareness empowers us to make great decisions to support our productivity. And we get to empower our kids with that information. So if I see my daughter working on homework and I see her getting distracted, I can say, you know what, I see your brain's needing a break right now, or right now you're not using your focused attention. What do we need to do to get you back into focused attention so we can knock this homework out and be done with it? So from the best of times, it's that awareness and understanding we have about ourselves that allows us to tap into the immense power of the brain. Then from the worst of times perspective, we are bombarded with stress, with change, with distractions, and that takes a toll on us. And then when we look at our lifestyle, are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating in a way that supports an optimal brain? If we're eating highly processed foods that have food dyes and preservatives in them, those are all things that drive up inflammation, and inflammation can mask healthy function in the brain. But again, we've got knowledge and awareness about that can equip and empower us to say, gosh, I've been feeling really tired and sluggish this week. What can I do different to help? Maybe I need to look at what I'm eating. Am I getting exercise in the morning? We can empower ourselves to do more. So I'm going to go with it's the best of times, but we just need to make good choices.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now let's come to your book, Back on Track. I like this title, but what did you have in mind when you went for this particular title, Back on Track?
Sure. So I've worked with Brain Balance, which is a company that helps children and adults optimize development for 15 years. So for 15 years, we've been working with kids and adults that want to improve their attention and focus, their ability to regulate their mood and behaviors, to do better in school. So we work with people that have both diagnoses and undiagnosed, but wanting to do better in those areas. So I was always very aware of that. That's the area that I've done research in, is improving cognition and overall well-being. And then when the pandemic hit and the world shifted for a prolonged period of time, I had more and more families and friends reaching out on a daily basis, really worried about their kids, seeing changes and differences in them. And I kept seeing headline after headline in the news that was so negative. Increased rates of ADHD, of anxiety, seeing larger achievement gaps in learning in our kids. And I kept waiting for the hope and for some solutions and guidance, and it wasn't coming. And so finally I decided I needed to stop waiting, and I needed to partake in the conversation to say, what did the pandemic remind us about important aspects of development, and what was it that changed that had such a negative impact on these things? So when our lives shifted and we took away sensory exposure, as parents with young kids during the pandemic, we weren't taking our kids to the market with us. We were leaving our kids home as much as possible. So they weren't getting to go to the market or grocery store to smell all the different smells and see all the different people and hear all the different voices and languages. They were leading a less sensory rich life. We took away that variety and exposure. There was less movement and physical activity when, again, we stayed really close to home. And in infants as young as 6 months of age, there were differences in the brain that you could see on imaging and on motor milestone development. But the good news is the brain is resilient. The brain can change. We're able to get our kids and adults as well back on track. But we need to understand what healthy development looks like to know when things have veered off track. And then we need to empower parents and individuals with what can you do from home on a daily basis to both optimize existing function, as well as what can you do to springboard and change development. So that was why I wrote the book, is I was answering the same questions over and over and doing media interviews on television, talking about what we were seeing and why I needed to write it down and get it out to more people.
Right. You have the book with you, so if you can
I
show it for
do.
the
I
audience.
do. And I'm so excited. The book is a tremendous amount of work, but I've just been so appreciative of the feedback, and that we've been receiving. And the book, it's called Back on Track, A Practical Guide to Help Kids of All Ages Thrive by Dr. Rebecca Jackson. And it's available on Amazon and anywhere online you buy books. And it's help and hope for parents wanting a deeper understanding. And it really talks about development from birth through age 18. I always found there were so many great resources for infants and toddlers of the motor milestones and what development looks like. But development is also developing attention, developing emotional regulation, well-being, how we learn. There's developmental milestones in all of those categories. We all go through times of anxiety in our life. That's a typical part of development. But when anxiety is lasting too long and interfering with life, then that's when it becomes a concern. So knowing what anxiety and behavior looks like at various ages can empower us as parents to know when to worry and what can you do to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is much to learn about the brain, and it is better to discuss with people who know about the brain. As we learn more about the brain, we find more things about it. But it is always, as I said, good to listen to you people and know more about. Otherwise, we will not be able to understand. The best part is to be as close to nature. So those people, Dr. Rebecca, who want to learn more from you, more about their brains, but through you, to what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. One of the things that I'm so excited about is our brain balance centers. We have locations all throughout the US, but we also have a remote program. So you can do brain balance from anywhere in the world. So if you yourself are having areas of struggle or have a child that's struggling, brainbalance.com is a great way to start to find out more, to understand who it is we help, what change can look like when it comes to improving cognition, attention, emotional regulation, and learning. And then you can find me on Instagram at drrebeccajackson.com or on LinkedIn, Dr. Rebecca Jackson. That's the best way to find me.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.